we are reviewing a new face for you, Sunny. Dulquer
Yeah.
Salmaan in this movie that was quite fun, man. I got to say, this was a really
So
entertaining movie.
enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's been a while since we've done like a straight up, I guess, entertainment piece without having anything deeper behind it, I guess.
There's a time and a place for that, man. Yeah.
Exactly right, man. But I'm going to blow your mind right now, man, because as you know, you are the biggest fan of Mammootty that I know. Are
True,
you
my
the
man.
biggest fan of Mammootty's son that I know?
What? The main guy?
Dulquer Salmaan is Mammootty's son.
Dulquer. What?
Yep.
Man, I'm looking at his pictures now. What? This blows my mind. I mean, this explains why he could be a super charismatic dude, but
Yep.
I did not see that coming, man.
No, definitely for all our fans out there listening, I know I have covered a few Dulquer's movies in the past, but I told Sunny specifically not to look into this actor and don't do any research. Don't Google him because that's the first thing you'll see if you Google him, I assume. So,
what?
Yeah, man, this was Mammootty's son. So we're going beyond the.
Feel like I didn't even know he had a son at this point. Like I assumed he would have, but what? So what is he big? And this is the first film I've seen. Okay.
I think he's a pretty big deal, man. Like obviously I think the way we've approached movies is we've sort of taken actor by actors, so we're familiar with a few faces. Like the industry's, this shows us how big the industry is. That we've covered off so many movies and we still haven't come across, a superstar like Dulquer Salmaan. It shows you, man. There's a lot of talent in this industry.
Because his performance here is amazing. This is not like he's just been given a role because he's the son of a famous actor and an icon. Like this is an incredible performance. So
I'd be interested to know a bit more of his history from all our fans listening. Anyone that's listening right now to this sort of review, this breakdown of ours, because it's one. The name is interesting. I don't really understand how his name is Dulquer Salmaan.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is it a stage name? Did he intentionally change his name just so that there's no sort of obvious sort of nepotism or anything like that? So it'd be interesting to know, like, why is his name different and sort of what was his journey into acting? He's been around for quite a while. He's acted for quite a bit, but honestly, I think from the movies I've seen of his, this is definitely my favorite of his. This movie, man, his performance in this movie was something else. So good. But yeah, man, I'll get your take on not just his performance, but also a few others. But let's start with Dulquer Salmaan. What was your performance knowing this information as well now, man?
Well, this explains probably my first comment about him is just the amount of charisma this guy oozes on the screen. That's the first thing you notice because every time he's on screen, you can't help but be drawn to what he's doing and what he's saying. He's got this magnetic presence. And look, if he's Mammootty's son, there's a clear explanation for this. Obviously, he's a very talented actor in his own right as well. But if we're talking about charisma and presence, Mammootty's like peak of that, right? And this guy, he's got that same style. Because I think one of the best aspects of this film is just how charming he is throughout the whole course of the film, despite the fact that he becomes a pretty nefarious character, or you start to understand how some of those charming elements have a negative side as well. You think about how he kind of enters this film. He pretends to be like the boss of these cadets at the Air Force, and he's giving them instructions. So hilarious. He's giving them instructions, making them say random words, and they immediately just fall behind him because of how authoritative he is. And this just shows a great performance, but also some of the characteristics we see in the Kurup character, his willingness to kind of lie, his ability to embody people that he's not and make that completely believable. But in that scene, you instantly fall in love with this really cheeky character, right? He's anti-authoritarian. He wants to stick it to the Air Force commanders who are all uptight and don't believe that he'll amount to anything in his life. And you're kind of batting for him because he's a very charming guy. He's got a great smile and he's always having a laugh. And then you see in the second side, behind all of that, there's these other nefarious things going on. And so he's able to balance those two things so well throughout the whole film. He's able to be charming. He's able to be arrogant. He's able to be vulnerable. So it's not even just a single tone performance of a guy who's always smiling and charming. There are nuances to this as well. So, man, overall, what a terrific performance. Like, this is amazing.
No, definitely, man. And I think that point about how he's sort of sticking to the man or sticking to the Air Force stuff, it's sort of showing at the start, right? I didn't even sort of remember it so much, but even like the very first scene is like him cheating I think he cheated on his college scores or something like that. And that's why they forced him to go to the Air Force,
to like
basically
discipline him or
academy.
like fix him up. Yeah,
Like,
that's right.
basically like there's no other option. Like you just have to go do this kind of thing.
Yes.
So yeah, he's always had that chip on his shoulder, that I guess from his parents doubting him, that he wouldn't amount to anything. Obviously, the senior instructor at the Air Force is like out for him.
Humiliates him.
I guess later on they really show that he's like kind of trapped in there. Like he does feel like a bit of an outsider in that very strict regimen. And they show us later on sort of the stuff that he does. But you're right about it being really nuanced, because while there are moments in the first half where he's like showing us his more sort of a comedic side, obviously. I mean, that intro scene was, I was cracking up how he's making them sort of do all the exercises for them, only to realize afterwards. But you get, it's a good scene, because not only is it like funny and a great intro to the movie, but you also learn a lot about the character and what he can actually do, the manipulation he can play, the games he can play with other people. Very easily, he can improvise just like that. Like, sort of that ability to do that. And we see that throughout the movie, how he's able to escape, narrowly from people, be a con man throughout the entire movie.
Take on different personas, like all of that.
Exactly right, man. So yeah, it's pretty, I really enjoyed the performance of him, and you're right, and the charisma just oozes through, man. Like he's so charismatic, so magnetic on the screen. Just want to sort of follow him, because it's weird, because we know that he's a criminal and we're waiting for that shoe to sort of drop throughout the movie. But as we sort of see the first half, we're just really rooting for him and enjoying him. We're enjoying him, like the mischievous stuff he does, like going out to the rock concert and taking his friend with him as well. So yeah, it's actually quite a bit in the story, man, which we'll definitely touch on. But
100%, man. And can I just follow on from your point about how we see him being mischievous, but have like it's such a like interesting conundrum I was facing when watching this movie, because I was kind of rooting for him and enjoying all of his antics, but we also know what this story is, or like, well, I knew broad strokes that he was going to do something really bad. And so I felt like you're almost rooting for him, but you feel bad rooting for him, because you know the kind of man he's going to become by the end of this film, or what it's going to reveal. So that always sat really awkwardly with me, but he balanced that performance really well, like being endearing versus being a con man who does some pretty heinous things. One other thing I would say as well, man, I think the story unfolds in a way that really helps his character as well, because he's always got this air of mystique around him, and he's a bit of an enigmatic figure, and there are deliberate holes throughout the film which get only filled in at the end of the film. And so that mystique is helped, because you never get the full story until the last half an hour of the film. And so the way the story is told really helps create this charismatic, enigmatic figure as well.
Yeah, no, that mystique is a great point. And I think his like that balancing of charisma and mystery just works so well hand in hand together, because you can just see like there's certain scenes, like, I think there's some moments where we see, obviously sometimes, where he's like distressed about something, but we don't know what's going on until later on. Which is such a contrast to everything else we've seen of him. And he's able to play those two sides so well, so he balances that role so well, and he embodies this character of this, I guess, super charismatic, criminal. Like, like he's not, I don't know how he'd play like a real hard ass, like a real badass kind of a character, but this kind of character, like, with suave and charisma, but also mischievous, and also has something evil behind him. I think it's just perfect for him. From the little that we've sort of seen of him, it just seems like a perfect fit,
Amazing.
Basically made for this. But we can't really talk too much. We can't move on without talking about one of our favorites, man. And I was pretty happy to see this guy, because it's been a while, but man, this guy, his performance, he almost stole the show. He almost stole this movie in just a limited time he had in this movie, which is after saying so much about Dulquer, we have to talk about Shine Chacko, man. What a performance, man. What a larger than life, crazier than you could imagine. Shine Chacko, from the minute we see him to the last minute of his screen time, he's one tone. Not one tone. He's a few tones, but they're all of the crazy nature.
All of the crazy side of the spectrum.
What do you think of Shine, man, in this movie?
Man, are you going to tell me he's Mammootty's son as well? Because he's also an incredible performance as well. This is, I thought I'd seen Shine Tom Chacko like take it to the limits of being an unhinged character in some of the previous films we've watched.
Yeah.
But this is on a whole other level, man. This might be his like masterpiece of being a complete loose cannon, because he is, I mean, Dulquer is compelling, but he is mesmerizing every time he's on screen, Shine Tom Chacko, because you just never know what he's about to do.
No.
There are scenes in this that are just, we're trying to piece together what's going to happen next, because this guy doesn't operate on the logic of an ordinary person.
No.
Kind of like, to the extent possible, like the Dulquer character, Kurup, he is a logical guy. He's just using his logic in a nefarious way. Yeah. The kind of two sidekicks, Sabu and I forget the other character's name, Ponacha, and I think they're kind of reasonable people while trying to do kind of nefarious things. Shine Tom Chacko, I think Basi Pillay is his character. You don't know what's in this guy's head. No. He's willing to switch up plans so quickly. There's a handful of scenes that really come to mind with him, man. Like, the first one is the scene in the bar where he sees, in a restaurant, where he sees a man that looks kind of like Kurup, and he's like, all right, we're killing this dude. And he just stalks this waiter in public view to another room, offers him a cigarette, asks him to start drinking while he's on the job. And when he refuses the drink, like, the guy's nice. He takes the cigarette, just doesn't want to drink on the job. Shine Tom Chacko takes it as an offense to him and beats him up. You're just like, oh my God, we've got a sense of who this guy is. And then the scene with Charlie or Chacko, the man they finally end up killing.
Oh my God.
Oh man, the creeping dread as you watch, you know what's going to happen. But Shine Tom Chacko, in the confines of the car, right? It's all just happens there. And it's like a combustible environment. And then he stops the car and he walks into the back and decides to sit with him and force feed him to drink. He's so menacing and so scary in that scene, man. Like, flawless performance. And the most tense parts of this film were when he was in it.
Yeah.
Great cat and mouse scenes between Kurup and the police officer. But when Shine Tom Chacko is on the scene, that you can't match it. The dread he has.
Definitely, man. No, he was just so special in this movie, man. It's a performance I'm not really going to fade, because the first thing you mentioned, where he would not take no for an answer, like, it's hard to watch that and just not sort of crack up a little bit, because he's so insistent on getting this poor guy to just drink with him. It's unbelievable, and like how he just would not take no for an answer. It's just so unhinged, and he has this tone about him where he's like always kind of tipsy. He's always just about to lose it. You know, like he doesn't have, his face is never sober at all. It's always like he's always
sober in this film.
I mean, like the first thing we see, right? He's like asked he asked Dulquer's character, Kurup, basically, like, where's the alcohol? Like,
that's his first question.
Yeah. It's menacing, but it's a lot of fun, man. Like, I don't know, man. We've got to find out more about this guy's sort of personality, because I would love to see if he's like this in real life, in his interviews, and like probably,
has he done a rom-com? I want to know if he's done a rom-com, man. I want to see different.
I'd love to see I mean, one side of me says like, okay, I'd like to see some variety in his character. One side of me is be like, nah, just specialize and be this
100%.
crazy character, because you do it better than anybody. Like, does
it better than anyone.
It's he's specializing in this skill set, and I'm just there for it, man. And this was the best example of it.
It really was, man. And I didn't even touch on what I thought was perhaps the most menacing of the sequences, which is when they kind of say, okay, maybe we don't need to kill another random person like that looks like Kurup. Let's just kill one of the people here, one of his cronies. And they look at that Sabu character, and you just see the dread washing over his face, and he doesn't know what's about to happen. And it's completely believable, because the Shine Tom Chacko character, he can do anything at any moment. He has no scruples. At one point, he's even like, let's just kill Kurup and get his life insurance money. Let's just kill our leader guy. Like, the guy is completely without any moral compass. And so anything is possible. And like, Shine Tom Chacko portrays this character better than anyone else, I think. A man who is without any values and is just flitting from one thing to the next, and is completely reactive to the world around him. No forward planning at all.
No.
It's a scary man. Keep him away from me. Like,
definitely, man. No, definitely. It's like his, I think in that scene, because he does that thing where he's almost like trolling him a little bit. Like,
he is trolling,
like he basically has like a cackle, like a laugh after that. And it's like, oh my God, you scared.
It's a scary laugh as well.
It is. It's not like a jovial laugh. It's like a menacing kind of evil laugh that he's got. His voice is also something a bit different, like it's a bit growly.
Yes.
So he really fits into this character really well. So yeah, he was fantastic, man. Really, I mean, the performance in this movie in general were maybe the highlights, because we haven't even touched on
fair point.
who I really also enjoyed the to sort of be contrasting to that on the other side completely from everyone was Indrajith Sukumaran, Prithvi Raj's brother. So whole family affair in this one, man. But he was also really good, because obviously, you know, when you're playing a contained character, it's a different kind of performance altogether. But yeah, just to have him contrast and the battle between himself and Kurup, basically, that was so entertaining to watch, man. What did you think about himself throughout this movie?
One of the things I really enjoyed about how his character was portrayed was that he's an intelligent cop. He's not like an incompetent dude like we've seen in some other cop shows, right? Like who doesn't know what they're doing, and so the villain's just doing what they want, essentially. This guy is as smart as Kurup. He's only one step behind, and towards the end of the film, he's actually one step ahead.
Yes.
As we will see. But
that's right.
I love that this is an intelligent man. He'll do whatever. He is as determined as Kurup is to commit crimes. He's as determined to catch him. So he resorts to torture and things that, you know, aren't okay. But that shows just how determined he is to kind of catch this criminal. And there's a degree of obsession with it, I think, for him. He's finally found someone who's as smart as him, and he's going to catch this person. The cat and mouse between him and Kurup is amazing, man. And
definitely
it's done in a very believable way. So I thoroughly enjoyed this performance. And I think the contrast between, you know, the charisma that Dulquer has and Shine Tom Chacko's craziness is contrasted to how restrained the police officer is. He never has any outbursts. He looks like he's always in control, and he's never really fazed by anything. And so that was just a really great contrast, and almost like what you would want a police officer to be, really.
Yeah.
Someone who's methodical, someone who looks at all of the facts, someone who has very strong hunches about where things are at and is often right. So I thought just a very strong performance. There wasn't any overacting there. It was just exactly what the role demanded.
No, you're exactly right, man. The intelligence was really good to see. Like he was a really like smart cop, and they showed that in more ways than just the plot itself, right? His grasp on language was really good. Like he spoke fluent English, he spoke fluent Hindi without an accent, nothing like that. It was the best Hindi that I think I've really heard in any Malayalam movie. To be honest, it was that smooth. Like and obviously, and like you're right, the level headedness is really good. But he also showed like there's moments where he showed a real like empathetic side too. I think, right? Like with the scene with
Yes.
when he goes and sees Charlie's family, and he thinks that his wife is, you know, gone through this. He's not over the top, like he's not compassionate in a way that's like unreasonable, but he definitely, like, you know, he's like, look, I'm sorry I have to do this. I'm sorry I have to ask these questions, but we need to know this information. So there is sort of facets to him as well, I would say. Like there is a good side to him, it seems like, and there's a real passion to obviously find Kurup.
Yes.
And yeah, exactly. He's as passionate as Kurup is to crime, as he is to sort of solving crime. So it's like the perfect counter balance to sort of Kurup. So those two just played off each other so well, I thought. So yeah, performance was really great, man. Little bit of love to obviously Tovino Thomas, who we see get poisoned and die in this movie. Unfortunately, it's a surprise to me that someone like a Tovino Thomas, a huge name, as big as, you know, like probably Dulquer or maybe somewhere along the same stratosphere as him, to play like a role, like a cameo for like 10 minutes of screen time, like maybe 10 lines of dialogue.
And it's not like a cool role. He's like a very demure guy who's like quite pathetic at times. He's like, I'm going home to celebrate the anniversary or something. And he's like very mild mannered and gets killed instantly, like no resistance, basically. So he's not playing a cool character, but I just love that he's willing to just do the short cameo and, you know, support the film in his own way. Like so much props.
Yeah, definitely, man. A little bit of love to the actress as well. I thought her role didn't have too much in this movie, but with what she was given, the character Sobhita, Dhulipala, Sharda, thought she was good.
I thought she was good, man. I quite enjoyed her performance, because I don't think she was just kind of a tick box, here's a romantic character to kind of lead with. At least in the first half she wasn't.
Yeah, first half.
Because you kind of understood like her motivations. You know, you saw her with her friend at the start at the hospital, and then she obviously feels strongly about Kurup's character. So I thought like she wasn't kind of a damsel in distress. She wasn't kind of one note character. She was decently fleshed out, I thought, and she did a great job with what she had. But and we might get to this at the criticisms part, she kind of falls away in the second half, I think. You don't really see her very much, but I think the actress did a very solid job with what she was given.
No, definitely. Stuff we'll touch on later. But yeah, in terms of acting wise, I can't fault her for what she was given. I thought it was good. Before we get on to the story though, man, I think it's good we sort of touch on sort of this movie's production, man, because this movie, man, what a visual feast. Oh man, like
really was
again
a joy to behold.
The differences between like Hollywood and the Malayalam film industry, we're seeing it more and more. Like this movie is fantastically shot, like from a cinematography angle, from a location setting angle, from sort of obviously the score and the sound of this movie is fantastic. It's a real visual treat, man, to sort of go through all these places and see the different landscapes and see the different worlds that they're in. Did you enjoy that side of things and how this sort of added to the movie?
Completely, man. I thought this was almost up there with the highlights of this film, with the incredible story and the acting performances as well, because the visuals here are stunning. And you talked about location and everything else. And one of the other aspects they did terrifically well was how they moved through the eras, right? Because I think this film moved from like the 70s, the 80s, maybe even the 90s as well. And it did it seamlessly. But it wasn't a superficial kind of homage to those eras. I think they had a great deal of detail in there, from what the characters were wearing, what their dress style and hairstyles were, the cars they were driving, the environments they were inhabiting. It didn't look like a cheap set. The directors and the people who were involved in design of all aspects of this film had a great deal of, I think, affection for this and wanted to do it right. And it was so believable, man. And as corny as it sounds, I felt like I was transported to those times because it felt real. Like no part of it just felt like a cheap set to me. I completely believed we were in the 70s in an Air Force, or the 80s in the Air Force, or in an 80s hospital, or in an 80s or 90s police station. It all felt very realistic to me. And so the just attention to detail, man, was flawless in this, and you can really appreciate that.
No, you're exactly right, man. Whoever was in charge of sort of the look and feel of this movie, I thought did a fantastic job. Yeah, it's just a great point, because like we even go through it with obviously whoever was in charge of costume design, like 100%. Like Dulquer's jackets and stuff like that, the aviators he's wearing it sometimes. That's
that
a
adds to the charisma and the coolness that he embodies, right? Like it adds another layer to it.
The ambassador cars that they had at that time, and even with the actress in the first half, like they showed sort of some of the fashion that she was wearing with the dresses and stuff like that. The influence of sort of Western culture coming slowly into the the world of India as well. So they did a great job of showing all of that, as well as just some beautiful scenery, man. Like my God, they had this I don't know if it's a mosque or what it was in Mumbai. They had that beautiful building. And they had obviously the Persian Gulf, which they showed as well. Did, and one thing I have to mention is Kurup sort of costumes that he goes through when he's in disguise. I was cracking up at some of them, man. Like he's dressed up as an old man. He's got a turban on in one of them. He's got he's dressed up as a like a Swamiji.
Got the prayer beads and everything.
He must have a lot of fun with this. Just
man,
playing different roles. It's
I hope whoever was responsible for the design of this film, all elements, got some kind of accolades for this, man. Definitely. Because this is top notch in every way.
Definitely, I think they definitely deserve it. It's obviously this movie was a big blockbuster hit, as we sort of listened to before. Like it was one of the highest grossing movies of the year, I think, or maybe even the highest. But man, we'll move on to sort of the plot and talk about that a little bit, because this movie, man, like it's, as we said before, a really entertaining movie. But like it's definitely very different, and it's the non-linear style I think has its pros and cons. I think it definitely has a lot of pros in terms of entertainment factor, which it really actually leads on to make this movie really entertaining to watch, because you're seeing the mysteries unfold at different times and places. But in terms of like the story, in terms of like even following this character's life and seeing that unfold, what do you think about that, and also the non-linear fashion of it? Man, how did you enjoy this movie in terms of what it was telling us, like the story?
Completely riveting, man. Like I walked into this film without any background of this story, right? I generally understood it was about a fugitive character, and I had no further context. So I was riveted from mostly the start to end, man. It is a longer film, but I think some of the choices around non-linear stuff helped in my appreciation of the film, because I think it was just able to keep the interest going, because there were very clearly kind of blank spaces deliberately put throughout the film. And you're like, what happened to lead to that? He's scratching his head in a cafe with his wife, and you're like, what's just happened there? You don't know. and then it's only in the last kind of half of the film, last half an hour of the film, you then go in and fill the gaps. But it keeps you hooked because you know there's more going on than what's being showed on the screen, and you're waiting for kind of those bombshell moments to drop. So I was mostly riveted from start to end, man. I don't think you could go wrong with this story because it's just a fascinating story, right? And I don't know how much of this is real or embellished, but I was there for it because you can't go wrong with, a fugitive story that's going to capture people's attention and imagination, especially people who are new to it. I thought, the nonlinear part worked really well. It kept me entertained. I also just thought it was such an interesting contrast, this first half to the second half, because you start off quite kind of upbeat in a way, right? Like you have Kurup going to a police academy. He's after all kinds of mischief. They're sneaking out of their dorms to go play at a rock concert or sing some rock music at a local bar. He develops this beautiful relationship with his friend Peter George, I think, and that's quite nice. There's the romance with the Sharada character. And so there's a lot of just lightheartedness and kind of beautiful moments. And you always have that sense of something more is happening, but it really takes the second half of the film to see exactly what the nefarious aspects are. And then it takes a bit of a dark turn. So it was, I think, an interesting contrast. And I think it broadly worked for me as well, man. So I really enjoyed the plot and the premise of this film.
Yeah, no, same, man. You're exactly right about how, I think it's not hard to get interested in watching a movie like this because it's the premise itself. It's about a gangster or a criminal or something like that. And that itself is like, all right. Same, like you had no idea about Kurup really, who he sort of was, but obviously he was a big figure. I would love to know how big he was sort of in India. Is he like an Al Capone level kind of criminal?
Yeah.
Obviously, his crime was not like gang war or anything like that. It seemed like it was more to do with insurance. And it became a bit broader as he sort of went on. Went on and on, which was also interesting to see because I really liked how this movie took its time. While it was not linear, it's still sort of up the stakes as we sort of progressed.
Yes.
Because obviously we didn't start with the death of anybody. It takes us quite a while for anything to really happen because it takes a while for all the upbeat stuff to happen. He has a relationship. It's almost show us like the positive sides of him more. He's more cheeky and he's a good person. He marries like his servant's daughter, which is extremely controversial.
Exactly.
And again, I don't know how much of this is true, so it'd be great to sort of discuss that a little bit as we sort of go on. But in terms of just how it unfolded, man, it was interesting because it challenges you as a viewer because you are always trying to figure out okay, where am I now? And I think a lot of the costume design and stuff helped with that as well because you didn't need to sort of have to read exactly where you were. You could just tell by Dulquer looks like this now, and he's wearing these clothes as opposed to those. Later on, so the setting and time and place, and as well with the costume, all worked really well to sort of have this sort of mystery. It's like a game. You're piecing the pieces. You're piecing like a puzzle together and trying to figure out what makes sense where. And there were times, honestly, of confusion. I found. I was like, I didn't really understand what's happening here. Why is this happening? I had to take some time to realize where we are in the story sometimes and how does it make sense. Later on, there's some confusion, but overall, broadly, it was just entertaining. I think at the end, I understood most of it. So that's a good thing. It wasn't so confusing because it's a lot, man. The plot was actually quite dense. I feel like there's
a lot of things going on. So, and the schemes that he's concocting are quite complex, right? You have the insurance fraud thing. That is the most straightforward of what he was doing. Being an arms dealer, trying to sell oil from the Arabian prince person, the Middle Eastern prince, and that prince was stealing oil from his father and selling it illegally through. It was super complicated. So these kind of schemes that he was hatching are not straightforward to get across. But I kind of appreciated that there's a little bit of complexity to it, and they didn't dumb it down, but it was hard to follow at times. Yeah,
definitely. But I did really enjoy the second half, and I think the last hour was especially riveting. Although that part where there's sort of I guess that's when the cat and mouse game really gets close. That's where obviously the DYSP basically he almost catches him a few times. It's interesting because I think before that, I believe the most captivating part was the death and Shine Chacko's sort of. You could almost say interlude or small role that he had because in the scheme of things he wasn't there for a long time.
No,
he sort of comes in and out, but his impact was so good that he's hard to forget. in that
He's
movie.
there at the central event kind of
Yeah,
thing.
correct.
And then like while there are bigger crimes, that's the one that kind of has a bit of
Yeah,
emotional kind of resonance
yeah. But the
and
last
starts
last
everything.
hour was just like, yeah, just glued to your seat, basically waiting to sort of see how this unfolds. Is he going to get caught? Is he not going to get caught? Because again, we didn't know the exact story of Kurup and whether he's a court criminal or not, or whether he's still on the run.
Yes.
So they led to some parts of at least some mystery for us, at least, because we're not that close to the
Yeah.
story, which is good. But
And 100%, man. And just reiterating kind of the cat and mouse, how good it was to have a police officer on the same level as Kurup.
yeah,
Because if that wasn't there, I don't think there'd be tension in any of the chase scenes, right? This man is smart. He was always a step behind and sometimes a step ahead. But
yeah,
that dynamic, it always felt like the police officer isn't far off from catching this guy. He's
definitely.
just as clever. So that battle of wits was equally kind of building the tension throughout that film, I
Mm.
think.
Yeah, and also the twists and turns. I think I really enjoyed
Yeah.
that. Like there would be a lot of
Yes.
like, especially towards the end, like, oh my god, he escaped this time narrowly like this, and now
Yes.
he's had to resort to this place. And even like the part where he was like under like he was like under their nose kind of thing. Like he kept
Yes.
being around them. He has like a
Yeah,
line
yeah,
somewhere,
just
like if I'm gonna make sure that, I'm gonna make sure that I'm seen when they're around me or something like that. So
yes, yes.
it's pretty interesting to sort of see that game as well. So yeah, man, very entertaining movie.
So
Um
fun.
be interesting to talk about because obviously the challenges behind doing this movie. One is basically you're basing it off a real life character,
Mm,
real life sort of criminal. So man, I'm not sure how much of this was embellished or not, how much of this was true. I think from the little
yeah.
research I have done is I know that the dead body part was true. Like he killed
Yep.
somebody that looked like him to
Yep.
basically get insurance fraud. Now I don't know how much more of that was there, but did you have the challenge of watching this movie to be like, what is true, what is not? Because I think it's a bit like that in all kind of biopic movies, right? Where you're looking at it like,
Yeah.
unless you know the person, like if you follow a sports star or if you follow like an actor or something like that, then you might be able to pick it apart because you know more knowledge than the general fan
Yes.
does. But in this one, were you ever in a position where you were questioning what's real and what's not?
100%, dude, because I think the killing of the person is probably the most realistic of the crimes that you can
Yeah.
commit because it's straightforward, it's within your control, and it's in its own way quite small scale. When
Yep.
you look at then the other kind of crimes he's committing, firstly, selling some of the Indian
Alcohol.
arms to international,
Oh, that one. Yeah.
like
My
to
God.
other like arms dealers, right? That's a pretty significant
Yes.
international criminal enterprise you're running
Yep.
while you're somehow still in the military system or the Air Force system. Like you got to be really smart to pull that off
Yeah.
and keep it going for that long and create those connections to an international crime syndicate, right?
Yeah.
So that seems hard to believe, but look, if it happened, that would be
Mm.
amazing and shows what a genius he is. And then the kind of oil deals, like where
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
meeting up with a Middle Eastern prince who wants to take money from his own dad and sell some of the oil and keep the profits
Mm.
himself, and him supporting him and establishing a relationship with him. That is huge criminal
Yeah.
enterprise, man. That is crossing international boundaries.
Definitely.
Like how believable is it that this small scale figure in Kerala is suddenly doing these
Yeah.
international crimes and part of an international syndicate? So those things like maybe made me question whether it's true,
Mm.
but he's obviously very smart. So if someone about one of the comments say this happened, I wouldn't disbelieve
Yeah.
that either.
Yeah, definitely interesting because I was watching it going like, there's some parts I'm like, all right, how did he become like the sidekick of like a prince? Like that seems
Yeah,
a little crazy.
that is.
So yeah, it's some parts like I'm not sure if it was real again. Like I'd be like, wow, okay, like that's completely amazing. But yeah, you're exactly right about the most. I think the part that's the most like they would have probably just taken the truth, which was that he killed somebody for insurance
Yeah.
that looked like him and did the whole burning of the body and all that stuff. I think that
Yes.
was all there. But then the rest about that, even the relationship, like I don't know if that was real about was it did he
Uh,
marry a servant's
yes.
daughter? Like
Yeah.
that seems like extremely, that seems like kind of wild, to be honest, because then that sort of shows that I don't know where he was in the hierarchy or the his socio-economical system structure his situation actually as
Yeah.
compared to hers. It's such a big contrast. Like it's not something you see every day.
No.
So yeah,
And yet at the same time, man, it's not completely kind of
yeah, true.
unbelievable for his character, right? Because he is a
Yeah,
rogue. He
that's
kind
true.
of wants to stick it to authority as well, right? So
Yeah,
him saying, I like this woman, I will marry her, is somehow in this realm of believability
yeah.
for the character we're presented on the screen.
That's a good point, actually. I think the movie does a good job of whether things are true or not in real life. I think the world they built around this specific portrayal of the character, portrayal of Kurup, worked within its own world. So I think that
Yeah.
helps me to dismiss it a little bit. Like,
Yes.
even if things didn't happen in real life, the way they've done this is sort of believable because of what we're shown the Kurup version. You know, he's very charismatic and he's, you know, anti-authority and stuff like that. So having a relationship like that, you know, maybe it does make sense for someone like him because he doesn't really care about that. He wants to more stick it to people that
Yeah.
are sort of against his, you know, his thoughts or the way he
Yeah.
operates.
He doesn't like people telling him you can't do a thing,
Exactly.
or like, and this is his way of saying, no, I can, and I will do what I want.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. Yeah. But yeah, it's a highly entertaining movie, man. I really enjoyed it. I think we'll touch on some of the criticism because while I did, like, you know,
Yeah.
as an enjoyment piece, I was up there, man. But definitely, if I have to step back and just, you know, put my critic hat on a little bit, there were sort of some parts that I did think that probably could have been probably done a little bit better. But what were some of your criticisms, man, to start with? What did you think?
Yeah.
What didn't work so well, I guess?
It flows on nicely from the conversation we're having about Kurup's character, because while I think there is certain elements of believability to him, I felt like I never was emotionally connected to him in any way. And maybe you don't want to be because he's like a pretty nefarious character, but I think I've struggled with a couple of elements. Firstly, I don't understand his motivations really. Like, why is he doing the things that he's doing? Like, is it just to stick it to the man? Is it, you know, the the leader of the Air Force tells him you won't be a success in your life or you won't amount to anything? Is he kind of saying, well, actually I will, and this is how I'm going to do it? We know that he's kind of doesn't care about what the right way to do things is. He will do what he wants, but it's a pretty big thing to become a massive criminal. Like, what is his motivation for doing it? Is it just that he wants to stick it to the man? Is it that he just wants the wealth? In which case you never see him flaunting the wealth or doing anything kind of insane. He's not living in a big mansion or anything. So I don't understand why he does the things he does at times and what the underlying motivation for his actions are. So that was one thing. I think the other thing that I felt a bit jarring was that he commits all of these crimes, but the big one, the killing of another human being, like, that's such a massive escalation, right? From just like selling arms or selling liquor or, you know, smuggling oil to other countries. Killing a person is a huge deal. Yeah. And you never really understand whether he's okay with that. You're kind of led to believe he's okay with that. But like, is there any inner turmoil there? Because if he doesn't care at all, isn't that like the behavior of a psychopath or a sociopath? And that's not really what he's portrayed as, because he kind of has this romance. He has these friendships with people. And so I don't really like, it seems such a big thing to do. And yet the film kind of just brushes over the fact. He goes, yeah, we'll obviously have to kill this person. Yeah. So that never kind of sat right with me. I felt like that is a moral conundrum that should have been explored and it should have been examined in some way. Did he feel any guilt about this? Because I don't think he's like the Shine Tom Chacko character. He has more of a moral compass potentially, but if I was to analyze it in isolation, I would say, no, he's kind of like a psychopath here because he feels no remorse for what he's done. The last thing is, I think you build up in the first half a degree of goodwill towards his relationships to other people, especially his wife and child. And suddenly he's just abandoning them. He abandons her twice. And the second time with a kid. And like she gets is kind of a note or something to indicate he's okay. But like, does he care about them? Is he actually a sociopath and he doesn't really care about them? It just felt like a bit of disjuncture. It's kind of created this very caring character and lovable character at the start. And suddenly at the end, the things he supposedly values don't matter to him at all, his wife and child. So I think just that motivations of the main character was probably the big missing piece for me, to be honest.
Yeah. No, the motivation was definitely one that was running in my head too. Like, the sudden escalation to just murder somebody. That sort of felt like it didn't feel like it suited the character from what we were shown.
Yes.
And it wasn't accidental or anything like that. It looked like it was a plot. Like he had an idea to kill this person using Shine Chacko basically to do that. And so he's very clever. They showed that side very well of the criminal, but they didn't really show the motivational side that much. One thing about you know, you hit on some points when I was thinking of, like, they spend a lot of time in the first half developing all these relationships, not just with the wife, but like even the friend character And like,
Yes.
it is kind of like half an hour, 40 minutes that we spend with these people. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, they're kind of almost as plot devices because they don't really have any, they're kind of inconsequential. Like they didn't lead
That's
to
right.
anything. Like his wife completely disappears. I wish, again, I don't know if they could even do this or not because of whether it happened or not. That's a challenge behind doing this kind of movie.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
maybe they don't have the information or they themselves don't know what the motivations were behind the actual criminal. So it's hard to, like, I can get away if you fabricate things like events and things like that, I can still pass. But if you're fabricating a person's character, then that's something really different, I think. So I don't know if other people involved with this movie, like any people that knew him in real life, for instance, to get that inspiration or like how well it was documented during that time. So I do, again, it's a challenging movie to do because of those things where you're trying to do a movie that's like this. You can't just, blatantly put like, he was a psychopath when he was not actually a psychopath, for instance.
Yes, that's
so
right.
it's a real challenge. But yeah, as just a movie watcher, I was kind of confused as to one, why he was like that, and two, also all these parts they put in the movie, which kind of did extend the runtime a little bit. Like the romance, while I think it was good to show him as in that kind of light and it was entertaining to watch, that was nice to see that. But at the end of the day, it didn't really add up to who he was. Like he had a kid with this woman. And that side is not really shown. Like he's not really shown as a good father or a good husband. He's really just like they're in a few scenes here and there with him.
That's right. Is there any remorse for leaving his wife two times and his child as well? Like there's nothing there, right? And I think the thing I struggled with a little bit is we obviously spent the first half of the film trying to understand this guy, right? And then in the second half, everything is kind of turned on its head and we don't really understand him.
Correct.
So if your view is that we don't know enough so we won't fill in the gaps of his personality, that's fine. But if you're trying to give some color to his character, then you got to try and make it consistent or go the whole way with it. Correct, like you kind of have to fill in the gaps of that motivation if you are trying to create a full kind of character piece here, which I think just kind of got left by the wayside in the second half of the film. And so you're right in that the wife doesn't get much screen time, and it almost felt like you're a tick the box.
Yeah,
you need a romance here. And while she didn't do a bad job, it was all very well done.
Yeah,
it's okay. What was the purpose of that romance thing? What was the purpose of that really nice relationship with Peter George? I think it was like, is it just that he leaves people and he's an enigma even to them?
Yes.
And that's the message. Maybe that's what it is. But if you're trying to kind of build up this character, you kind of need to have some consistency, I think.
Yeah, and it's a shame because like some of those characters, the thing about his sort of journey through this, there really isn't, like he has some close calls with the cops that are more situational, but there's no like emotional tension or even
correct.
Any struggle for him to get what he wants. Like there's like they could have, again, it's hard to talk about this because whether it's true or not, like was his wife actually a person that was confrontational and questioned like who he was and why he was doing things? If he wasn't like that, you can't just say that she was.
Of course.
If he was, if this wasn't a piece of fiction, then maybe that's something you might do. You might introduce even the character, the old friend he had from the Air Force Academy. He could have been sort of an old friend that was just touching points with him every now and then to sort of keep tabs on him to remind him of, hey, this is not who you are. Like you're not actually this person. But again, this is drifting away from what might have happened. So I find it really hard to criticize.
It's a good point.
A movie like this because it is like, you cannot blatantly lie about somebody's life and say that, yep, the wife was actually really strong. She challenged him all the time when maybe she wasn't actually like that. So 100%. I find it's a really challenging movie. Yeah, so I commend them for doing this kind of movie and, not being outlandish too much, because then it would have really been like if they do stuff that's a complete lie, like they made him a complete psychopath and he was actually very clever and calculated. Then it'd be like, okay, well, I can't really respect this movie because it just drifted so far off who this person was. So yeah, there was a few of that. Again, because for us, I think it's okay.
Yeah,
like, I'm sure predictability was probably one thing which viewers of this movie would have, because they would have known the story. If you know his story, then you know that he's alive still. He's a fugitive.
Yes.
So for us, we have the tension of seeing, is he going to get caught or not? But if you are anyone from Kerala that knows the story, even in India that knows his story, you'd have been like, yeah, there's no way the cops are actually going to catch him in this movie because he's not been caught in real life. And they still don't know where he is right now.
Exactly.
So that's one point that might have been another criticism. But Yeah, so I mean, like, I would say this movie is definitely the strongest point side. It's entertainment factor. Like, it's
Yeah,
great story to watch. It's very entertaining. Production
100%.
value, fantastic performances, fantastic. I think that's the high level, and I'm okay with that. Like, a movie doesn't. You don't always don't have to have a movie that completely fleshed out that perfect all the way. You know, this movie focused on certain
100%.
areas, which were,
Yes.
I guess, which made this a commercial success because you could watch this.
Yes.
You can watch this in the cinema, and it'd be a great cinematic experience as well. To be honest,
Yeah.
I think it would have come out during COVID. Looking at the timeline, 2021, so it would have been
Yeah.
during lockdowns. It wouldn't have. It might not
Yes.
even had a commercial release, which is a shame because
Good point.
I think watching a movie like this in the cinema would have actually been pretty fun.
Visually gorgeous piece, man. Like if you'd seen this on the big screen, it would have been amazing. And you make a great point, man. At the end of the day, did this film entertain the audiences? Certainly entertained me. It didn't lose me throughout its runtime. I was engaged. I found the story compelling. Yes, some criticisms, but I would still go out and recommend this to people because the story is fascinating. Incredible performances and production value. So I think it achieved most of what it aimed to do and did it well.
No, I definitely agree, man. It's interesting because we could poke holes in it, but I would think at the end of the day, as you said, man, I just was enjoying this ride, and I think it's a kind of movie that, having conversations like this make it even better because you really get to, be like, remember that scene? That scene was so cool, and you have a lot of points you can pick apart. So yeah, it's not too bad, man. We'll probably wrap it up pretty soon, man. We're gonna try out our still new sort of rating scale. We've drifted away from the D scale because we were giving everything dynamite and dope.
Straight dynamite.
Yeah, this is going to be a dynamite again, probably.
Yeah.
So in case you're missing that, there you go. But from IMDb, man, IMDb gives this movie a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. Oh, that's on the lower end for me, man. I would give this at least a 7.5, I think.
So you're above the average.
Above the IMDb. Because at the end of the day, I was compelled this entire time watching this film. That predictability element wasn't there for me because I'm a foreign audience, didn't know this guy's story at all. And so I was just enjoying how it was playing out. I enjoyed everything that was happening on screen, the performances, production value, all just stellar in this film. Like, we have some criticisms about the character piece, but as you mentioned, there are reasons, and it's a tough balance to get that right when you don't have much information on the main character. So I think 7 is lower than what I would give it, man. I think it's much higher than that.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same boat as you, man. I think 7 is probably a bit low for me as well. I'd probably give it around an 8 out of 10, I think. Not the most deepest philosophical movie, but just from an entertainment point of view, man, it's like I was not bored of watching this movie at all during the whole time. Like, I was just a fun movie to watch and try and guess and try and piece it apart. And the end, it does have kind of like a punch at the end, even, right? Like after with the final transformation with Alexander, it's like, okay, you're at it again.
A new persona. And to be honest, I thought the cop caught him because, like, one of the last scenes, he was on a cruise ship. Where was he going to run away from this Prince Waleed character? And then the way the fax comes through after the police officer goes into the sunset in his retirement, happy that he's taking care of Kurup. Reminds me of The Usual Suspects, actually, the final fax coming through. But great ending point. And because I kind of didn't know how it was all going to turn out, I was hooked right through to the end, man.
No, the end also, I was like, when the fax came through, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And they have a little, I guess you call it, post-credit scene with, I don't know, I'm guessing that's based on a real-life event. Maybe someone photographed him in Helsinki and basically, sort of got to know where he is.
Still at
it looks like he murdered him just from the sound in that. Like, it sounded like he was man. So he's obviously just murdering people as he's going along.
Now.
Now after he's got a taste,
he can't stop.
But hey, man, this was an awesome conversation of an awesome movie. I'm really glad we covered it. Everyone that Dulquer Salmaan fans, leave us some more Dulquer movies. Love to sort of see more of his stuff. Because I'm really impressed by him.
A film with his dad. That'd be baller, man.
I was thinking, actually, if they do a sequel to this movie, Mammootty should play the older version of Kurup.
That would be amazing.
That'd be, he played the 75-year-old version of Kurup, I guess. Man, there's an idea for you. Take that one for free, guys. Take that one for free.
Instant classic.
Yeah. But man, awesome as always. Great conversations. And man, looking forward to doing it again.
Till the next time, man.
See you, man.
See ya.